Repent, you sinners! You're in the hands of an angry God! You're in danger of the fires of... Hi, my name's Corey, and this is redeemeronlinechurch, and it's my mission here to help you understand and practice the Christian faith, regardless of your church attendance. And if that's something that you're interested in, at least more so than whatever that was, go ahead and hit that like button and the subscribe button. And if you want more, join the email list. And if you're looking for personalized, customized help when it comes to your faith journey, I'd be happy to sit down with you one-on-one, all for free. Just throw a wave emoji in the comments and we can get connected to talk about your spiritual journey. Now, right now, I'm putting together videos that cover the foundational beliefs, terms, and ideas that are contained in historic Christianity so that we can all better understand and practice the faith. And in this video, we're going to break down the idea of sin, why it matters, and what it might mean, if anything, for you. Now, the first thing you should know is that the Bible actually has a lot of nuanced ways of talking about our understanding of sin. In general, most people would probably define it as doing something you're not supposed to do, right? And then people ask questions like, well, is it a sin to gamble? Is it a sin to have sex before you're married? Is it a sin to spit on the Sabbath day? Because technically you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath day, but maybe your spit will land on the ground and then it'll water a seed, indirectly implicating you as a farmer farming on the Sabbath. When you think about sin like that, you end up looking for lists. But the Bible isn't a singular list of sins to avoid. It talks about it differently. In his book, Not the Way It's Supposed to Be, theologian Dr. Neil Plantinga defines sin as culpable shalom breaking. It's the vandalism of peace, the shalom of God, which is the way things ought to be, being shattered. The reason I like that definition is because it's something that we all believe in. Even if you're not a Christian, you have this sense of how things ought to be, right? We all have within us this desire for flourishing, not just for ourselves, but for the world. Sin is that which violates that flourishing peace. And there are three main words that the Bible uses to talk about that broken reality: sin, transgression, and iniquity. The Hebrew word in the Old Testament for sin is chata, and the Greek word in the New Testament is hamartia. In both cases, the word means quite literally to miss the target or miss the mark. It's about aiming for the good, but falling short in the execution in a way that breaks God's shalom. It fractures or shatters how things ought to be. A perfect example of this from the Bible would be the Garden of Eden story where Eve takes the fruit from the tree. You have to notice when you read that story that she sees that the fruit is good for food, pleasing to the eye, and desirable for gaining wisdom. So she took it. She was aiming at goodness, pleasure, and wisdom. This plays out in our present lives too, I think. The father who steps out on his wife isn't thinking to himself, oh, I can't wait to blow up my family and scar or confuse my kid. No, they're likely drawn in by a sense of intimacy, excitement, laughter, companionship. See, people don't usually sin for the hell of it. They sin for the heaven of it. We're aiming for a target, and it's probably a good target, but our execution falls short, and we end up breaking God's shalom, his peaceful design for how things ought to be. And of course, it doesn't make it any less grievous or bad when we sin, but I do think understanding what it is can breed empathy for others when they fall short, or for ourselves when we miss the target, because we all do. The second word the Bible uses to talk about that shalom breaking is transgression. In the Hebrew word, it's pasha. In the Greek, it's paraptoma. This isn't about, aiming for the good and missing the target. This is about knowing what the boundary is and crossing the line. And in the Hebrew, there's no ambiguity here. Pasha is straight up willful rebellion. In the Greek, it's a little more ambiguous. The word refers to your foot landing on the other side of a line. And sometimes it's there intentionally, and sometimes it's there because you slipped or you misstepped. In general, though, it's about knowing the rule and choosing to break it, knowing the law and choosing to violate it. In the Lord's Prayer, though, this is what Jesus teaches his disciples to ask God for forgiveness for. Forgive us for our paraptomas, our trespasses, our intentional acts that violate God's shalom and peace. The third word is one of the more difficult ones to kind of wrap your head around. It's this idea called iniquity. In the Old Testament Hebrew, it's avon, and in the New Testament, it's anomia. This doesn't refer to an outward action, but to the state of a person's heart. The Greek, at its root, literally means a state of no law. Meaning no or not, and nomos, meaning law. This is the propensity to ignore a particular set of rules or laws and just do whatever you want. And it's a little bit harder to put your finger on. In the Ten Commandments, the list ends with this idea that you shouldn't covet. And at its foundation, coveting lives in the world of our desires, the things that we all want. In the Judeo-Christian idea of shalom, we are all created with desires that are good, that lead to flourishing. Desires for food, for sex, for meaning, for purpose, for joy, and so on. Those desires function like dials to particular levels in shalom. Iniquity is the idea that those internal desires get out of whack. To put it most simply, iniquity is really about human beings being selfish creatures. And in my opinion, this is really kind of ultimately what's wrong with the world. At the basic level, it's the reason we don't have God's shalom. It's because I am riddled with selfishness. World leaders are selfish. It's kind of part of what it means to be human, it seems. Now, here's why all this matters. You don't need to be a Christian to see any of this at play in our world and in our lives, right? But what Christianity offers is a fix. It teaches that God's mission is to restore shalom, to bring heaven and earth back together. And you can see that in the person of Jesus, a piece of heaven walking on earth. You can see it in that prayer that he makes, that God's kingdom would come, that God's will would be done on earth as it is in heaven, on earth as it is in heaven. That's the trajectory of the Christian faith. And I love that. I find it compelling and beautiful. But in order to have that, to see that, you have to be willing to acknowledge the current reality, that things aren't as they ought to be in the world and in me. But in Jesus, we can find forgiveness. And in God, we can find hope for that someday that'll be better than this day. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.